The journey map is literally no investment other than your creative thought and knowing your customer. You look at all the different touch points where that prospect or customer touches your company or anyone in your company touches that client or prospect.
I check out this company and they call me and set up a demo like right then and there. And the other company, they have like this kind of process for setting up demos. It's like a week and a half out. Well, that company that set it up and they did it fast and they had everything to me and I'm already on a call as I'm doing this research, they are getting my attention and they're getting my vote because they've just simplified the research decision-making process. Why wouldn't I just go with the thing that got me the instant gratification? Welcome back to Go Go Grow. This is the end of our season, and we wanted to focus on a topic that is very important because after we did it in episode 9, we talked about customer journey mapping. Michelle and I dug into it more and realized so many B2B businesses are leaving money on the table with their marketing and sales because they don't have customer journey mapping. Let me repeat that. People are already spending money on sales and marketing, but they're not getting nearly as much back as they could be because they haven't thought through their customer journey. So we are diving in today about specifically 1, how customer journey mapping will be improving your sales and marketing, and 2, what you can do so that within 1 week of this episode, you can have your first customer journey map completed without it being a huge hassle for you and your business.
The journey map is literally no investment other than your creative thought and knowing your customer, which of course provides incredible return. But like Dasha said, don't leave money on the table. It's the same as spending money. It really is. So we're going to help you with that. So sit down, hang on to something and realize some knowledge that we're going to share with you here. The first thing that you need to realize with journey mapping for sales and marketing for customer service as well is it's not that difficult. There's a series of steps that you would want to go through. And Dasha, can you kind of go through just the bare minimum of what you need to do to get started?
Okay, so to get started, you need 1, a person you designate in your company, if you have more than one person, who's going to be the project manager for this over the course of about 1 week. That's all it's going to take. So designate a person. And 2, you develop a goal. It's good to have a goal for what your customer journey is going to drive. What answers are you going to seek from it? So are you trying to figure out where customers are being dropped in your sales pipeline? Are you going to try to answer the goal of what you need to update on your website and marketing materials? That is better messaging. Pick a goal so that you can focus on that and actually see and realize the results of this amazingly useful tool.
So think for a moment, am I creating something new or am I fixing a problem?
Right. So now you have a project manager and you have a goal. Next, determine all the stakeholders internal to your company that touch the customer in any way, participate in your customer journey. So that, of course, includes sales and marketing, but also, is there somebody in your operations team that fixes things when things go badly? Is the finance team touching the customer? Are they invoicing them? If you're selling a finance product, then obviously you need to bring them in as well. So just think, who's picking up the phone when somebody calls? That person is part of your customer journey map. You don't necessarily need to have every secretary involved, but the person overseeing that, there should be basically a representation from most of your departments that have anything to do with the customer. And second, you need to identify, not reach out to, but just identify who are the customer stakeholders. So in your customer groups, first of all, the segments. So government customer versus your commercial customer, or maybe it's your startup customer versus your enterprise customer. Who are the key sort of abstracted archetypical roles? So there's the customer type, the industry, and then there's the people who touch your company. That's maybe the project manager, that might be their head of, the person who buys, but who are the roles that are part of the decision-making implementation process that your company is going to be interfacing with. Now that you have this, you set a date for the workshop and you make a template that everybody fills out with their thoughts ahead of time. Then you get into a room and you start workshopping. So let's talk about the template.
Absolutely. So the components, you look at all the different touch points where that prospect or customer touches your company in any way, and where your company or anyone in your company touches that client or prospect. It can be a digital touch. It can be a phone conversation. It can be an in-person. It can be a product. Then you want to look at what happens at that touch point. Is information shared? Is feedback given? Is there just a general impression? Are they hearing someone else's review? So what information is being shared? What happens? Then you want to look at what personas are involved. If it's two different people at your client's company that are talking, you want to sell to the ones that say yes, but you don't want to forget the ones that say no. Then you want to think about what's each persona thinking? What are they feeling? What is the pain that they're feeling? What is the gain that they're hoping for? Is this a decision that is going to make or break their career or make or break their reputation? Is it going to make them a trailblazer in their organization? Do they have fear of the competition or fear of changes in the marketplace? Do they have hope that implementing your product or solution is going to put them ahead of the game? Are they just confused because this is something new and different, and maybe your company has a trailblazing product or service and they don't know where to go? So what are they thinking? What are they feeling? And that's at each and every step of the customer journey. What information will they need and what are their expectations? Because that way you can kind of parse out who delivers what information, what level of detail of that information, and the method, of course. How do they define, they being the customer or the prospect, how do they define success? How do they define failure? How do you define success and failure? And of course, then you also have to look at the time frame as well.
So this is basically the rows of your template. And before you get into the meeting that's a week away for your team, have every department and every stakeholder within your company just jot down what the stages were that they had those touch points and what they think the customer is experiencing based on the experience they've already had, plus a little bit of that empathy that they need to bring. This might feel soft and mushy. What are they feeling? You know, if you're a product-oriented founder, you're thinking, well, aren't they just using my product or aren't they just comparing features? But everybody has lives at home. Everybody's trying to figure out how to do their jobs more efficiently. Everybody has a boss or somebody in their company that's having to navigate. So those feelings, those are the things that they're navigating and solving for, in addition to, let's say, the literal problem. So having that empathy is going to, in every department of your company, and having them display to you what they touch, when and how they touch the customer and what's happening at that time. That's going to make that workshop really, really valuable. Everybody's going to learn a lot about the customer, gain a lot of appreciation, and be able to answer some questions, especially if you have some revenue leaks or maybe your pipeline's not as good. It's going to help answer some questions about where there might be missing touch points or touch points where we don't really know much about what the customer's doing. And so we're not being helpful to them during that.
That whole internal process as well, when each person that's involved is going back and saying, okay, let me think about this. I'm going to think about it for my area because I know my area. I'm an expert in my area. I don't really know Dasha's area very well. So I'm going to really have to think about that. So that individual's going to have to think from the customer standpoint and think from your company's standpoint. That's going to open up their mind, open up their creativity. It's going to make them ask questions. You want all of that. You're going to make money from that. You're going to stop revenue leaks from that. So this whole process not only is going to help you know your customer, it's going to help your employees know you and know how they can bring solutions to you, maybe solutions you didn't even know that you needed.
So those are the things you're thinking about at every touch point. Let's talk a little bit about what an archetypical journey typically includes. And that's basically your columns. That's basically the flow of the customer from before they ever even came to you to the point of when you're finished delivering to them and you're either turning them into more customer, more referrals, or they're leaving unsatisfied, which is also possible.
Right.
So that's basically the flow. So the first part is always the customer realizes they have a need or an interest.
Absolutely. It could be something as simple as saying, I need to keep this piece of paper sitting on my desk. I wish I had something heavy to put on it so it wouldn't blow. Hey, if I only had something like, I don't know, a paperweight. They may not even know that there's a product or service out there that solves their problem, but they know they need something that's going to do this. So it could be something of an internal discovery. They say, okay, we need something that's going to fix this problem. Or maybe they have capabilities that they aren't even aware of that they need to explore further, and they need some resources that's going to help them leverage that. So they say, hey, if we had this, we could do this. So it gets them thinking, and they say, all right, we need to explore this further.
And think about this. This is a part of the problem. Most of the time, we're not really addressing from a marketing and sales perspective. Most of our customers are coming at a much later stage to us once they're already in stage number 2, when they become aware of your product or service. But imagine if you are detecting this and you're starting to think about what the customer is doing at the stage before they meet you, you might be the one who can then provide something that makes them realize they have a need or an interest, and then you can be there even earlier. So this is just a very common example. Most companies are enter at stage number 2 of the touch point, which is awareness of you specifically, but the customer is existing and doing things far long before they find out about you. So mapping that journey and understanding what happens right before they engage with you, very helpful. Okay, so stage number 2, they become aware of you.
And that could be internally, they become aware, or externally. So if you have an outbound calling campaign, an outbound emailing campaign, any type of social media campaign, anything that you're doing outbound could make them aware of you from an external standpoint. So you're reaching out to them, knocking on their shoulder and saying, hey, be aware. So it could be an internal discovery. Somebody could refer you as the customer and say, hey, I just heard about ABC company. They're doing some pretty neat stuff over there. And that makes the customer aware. But it's not always to that point that they actually know. They don't have a lot of information. They're like, hey, something I should check out.
And just a quick note, a lot of companies, right, using outbound email and calls, right? So you might have somebody, maybe even a specialized company, you maybe hired them, they wrote those nice emails, they started sending those out, you have some open rates, you're looking at that data. Is that done in a vacuum, or is that done as a part of a customer journey? If you're not getting as good of click rates, or if you're not getting as good of response rates from that, is it because you're actually addressing the real pain point of your customer? Because if you just did that piece in itself, you're like, okay, well, we're just going to shoot emails addressing the pain point of the customer at that point. But if you map out the entire journey, which is what we're going through right now, you might be able to address, first of all, other pain points along that journey, or you might have a better clarification of what exactly the pain point is at stage 1 or 2, awareness and discovery. So don't do those things in a vacuum. Do the customer journey first, then do the lead generation, pain point, email, writing. Don't do it by itself.
So you've kind of hit on a little pet peeve of mine. So a little backstory. I've got 30 years in outbound lead generation, and awareness is not where you start those conversations for that cold outbound. That's not necessarily where you capture their attention and their awareness. That's really a marketing function where you're simply educating them. And at that point, educating them is making them aware, but it's not selling at that point. So you can't say, hey, this fixes your pain point. You don't know their pain point. So this will have to be a more detailed episode in season 2, but please don't make that mistake of thinking that you're jumping into the second stage of the customer journey and sharing with the customer that you're a solution to their pain. You don't know the customer, you don't know their pain. That's why we're doing the customer journey.
That's why it's so important. These things are not a vacuum. It's a journey.
Yes.
Stage 3, the customer starts to research. They're active.
Now, the amazing thing about research is it could come before they ever touch sales or after. One important key to the customer journey map, it's not necessarily a point A, point B, point C sequential map. It can go completely out of order. So it's not necessarily sequentially. You can jump as a customer from point A to D to B to F to A. Well, not necessarily A, but you can jump all over the place. You can revisit, you can skip. So the research, there are so many customers, over 50%, they have thoroughly researched you online through trade shows, through trade publications, before you're even aware of them.
Through podcasts?
Yes, through podcasts. That's the best information. They often research your company thoroughly. They ask their colleagues, what do you know about solutions for this business application or for this med tech or for this defense application? If they're researching you before you've spoken to them, how are you getting your message across to them? You have to be very aware of, at this touch point, how are they touching you? Who's touching you? What are their hopes, fears, goals, expectations? What information do they need? All those things we talked about at the beginning. You have to do that for every single touch point.
This is such a key point too, because the point of research, there's an overlay of research and decision-making within the customers. They're boiling down information. Different company archetypes. This could be a very high stakes thing. Like some companies, they have already found the solution, but they are required to demonstrate that they have considered three alternatives and gotten 3 quotes, right? And if you know your customer and you understand how that decision-making research process intertwines, you understand what's typically required, who is doing the research, what information is going to be personally applicable to them versus important to their company, you can be providing that in your marketing and sales. You can be front running those things and have those things ready in back pocket rather than those things are every time a customer asks you, you just have like some on the spot come up with answer for that. If you have this information, you have automation and you have a reduction of burden, you have standardization as well and higher level of quality because you've thought through the journey map and you've addressed this point as well. Okay, so they're researching. Now they're in contact with you.
Yes. So if they've researched and then contacted with sales, you need to make sure that that whole relationship is very well integrated. So it can't be a kind of a research and sales going like this. Well, I wish, you should have asked me about that. I could have told you, no, they complement each other. So the sales portion, the human to human portion, whether it's a business development rep, sales development rep, AE, doesn't matter, VP of sales. This point is where you shape the entire customer relationship. It sets the tone, it sets the trust, and it sets the pace for moving things forward. This is where you make trust. People buy from people. People don't buy from companies. They buy from people. So this is a critical, critical stage. Now, if somebody connects with sales before the research portion, the sales department can help guide that research. And as Dasha said, if you put thought into the research information you have available, that's where you can really take the upper hand. And if you've ever gone shopping for a vehicle or something of that nature, and you're looking at car make A and they compare it to car make B and car make C, actually models, the miles per gallon, the headroom, the cargo space. Oh, well, they've already done the research for me. And of course, I could easily go to all these different websites and verify that B and C and D, that's the information. But why would A publish it if it wasn't true? Because it can easily be proven true. You just saved me time.
And just to be clear, by your choice of B and C, you might have influenced the direction that they research as well. And so everybody just doesn't have enough time. And this research part, everybody needs to feel like they've done research before everybody has to feel like they've done some research before they buy, unless they're already 100% convinced through word of mouth and their manager told them that's the company. Most of the time people need to do research, but how much time and effort they have for research, how much capacity they have for it really depends. It really depends on what you're selling. If you're selling to enterprise and it's some huge system, they're going to take a year. They're going to do comprehensive surveys, 20 demos. Right. But if you're selling something smaller to smaller business, the research piece is sometimes very nominal. So you need to know this stuff. You need to know this ahead of time so that this doesn't surprise you about your product and about your service. And also so that you can actually integrate that into materials that you already have so that you are helping your customer through this part of the work. And by the way, let's say they don't pick you because actually it just wasn't a good fit. But because of your work, they knew about it. They might be returning back to your website for some additional product or service they have. Or if that doesn't work out, they might be coming back to you because you were a helpful piece of their customer journey. So just because you might lose a customer through them having to do research doesn't mean you shouldn't participate in that process with them.
Absolutely. And again, going back to that, what do you do at each touch point? What's the customer feeling? What are they thinking? What's motivating them? That's how you pick who you're going to compare yourselves to. If the areas where you and your product shine, let's go back to it's a B2C example in most cases, unless you're a fleet manager. But if you're looking at vehicles, let's say you shine on fuel efficiency and price. Okay, well, you want to compare yourselves with comparable looking cars where you get better fuel efficiency and your price lower. So if you know what your ideal customer is thinking and feeling and what their goals are and how they're motivated and what's most important to them, this helps you not leave money on the table and spend your marketing and advertising dollars wisely and come up with the right marketing message and value prop and train your sales and marketing and train your customer success and refine your product design because you know what the customer wants. You've gone through that customer journey map.
So they're in contact with sales, they're doing research, now they're comparing. They're in that research to decision conversion process and they're comparing with the competition.
This is always something where if you help walk with them through that process, it's a far safer bet than if you say, okay, well, I've shared with you my information. How long do you think that process will take? I'll check back with you in a week. No. You want to step them through that and help them determine or at least understand who are they comparing you to? Why did you pick them to compare you to? It may or may not help you with that one deal, but it gives you incredible insight for the next deal and to add to the journey map because this is not a stagnant document. How often would you recommend that they revisit this?
I think everybody should have established. Then when there's particular moments in time, new product rollouts, big updates to how you're doing product or service, or really big market shifts or changes, some new AIs come about. You could be journeying on, does AI have a role to play in this? But if you don't have any particular cause, I try to update it at least every quarter, every 6 months. It does not have to be a big effort. That first facilitation method is going to establish a framework. That first, this week-long journey we're on, where at the end of it, you sit down with some sticky notes, you stick them down, and then you have somebody capture that. You establish that once. Now updating it is much more simple. You've already done a lot of the research and legwork. And unless you're doing something completely different, now you're just updating it with better thoughts and with real feedback, maybe that you've even gotten from customers on this journey as you've referred back to them. Taking it back to the comparison with competition, here's a place where I have seen the ball dropped a lot in customer journeys and the ball picked up really well. So this one, I'm thinking of a SaaS experience I've personally had as a decision maker on which software gets implemented in a company, right? It's like you go through the process, you're in that comparison with competition. And I even have a company that I think I'm going with based on what I already found online. But then I check out this other company and they call me and set up a demo like right then and there. Okay. And the other company, they have like this kind of a process for setting up demos. It's like a week and a half out. Well, that company that set it up and they did it fast and they had everything to me and I'm already on a call as I'm doing this research, they are getting my attention and they're getting my vote because they've just simplified the research decision-making process. They've given me immediate information when I was seeking them. And now this other company that wasn't scheduled out for another week and a half, I'm like, oh man, do I have to wait another 2 weeks before I make this decision and come back to my boss to tell them that I've decided? Or do I just go with the one I just demoed? It looked good. It fit all the needs. The price is similar. Why wouldn't I just go with the thing that got me the instant gratification?
So the second company, at the time that the touch point was held, they knew what you wanted, what you were thinking, what you were feeling, your sense of urgency, the information you needed. They provided all of that. They met your timeline. And because at some point they had evidently gone through this type of process, they said, okay, we're going to strike while the iron's hot. They potentially turned someone who didn't know them from Boo into a customer. So how did it turn out?
I turned out to be a customer.
Yes.
Just to make note, their software did enable me to react more quickly on my own website for that company to know if there's somebody I could call or email right away who's on the website. So I was like, their product works because they had me right away. So not only their product works, but their service also works to support their product. So comparison, decision-making time, and negotiations.
Okay. So if you've gone through this journey hand in hand with your prospect, and it's not a journey where the customer goes alone. If you're not hand in hand with your prospect, you're an observer. You're not a participant in the process. So as you walk together through that decision-making process and that negotiation, you already know what's important to them. You know what the decision is being based on. You know who's making the decision and why they're making it and what's important to them. So you're in a better position and in a position of trust and knowing what the urgency is and knowing any barriers that you can quicken that decision. You can be in a better position to get a mutually agreeable solution. It makes that decision much stickier. They're probably not going to have buyer's remorse the week after they sign a contract. And it's going to be much more favorable for them to spread the awareness elsewhere. So the journey map helps to cement that process and that decision process. And then you go into the onboarding process. That's what cements the customer relationship and really gives it legs for the long-term relationship.
That's right. And think about this. Knowing all the different experience, there's obvious assumptions about negotiation. People want things at a lower price. People want things delivered sooner. But if you are thoughtful about all the feelings and thoughts of your customer during this process, you can be simplifying some of the decision making internally, right? Because contract negotiation can either take a couple days or it can take a couple months. And in B2B, there are long sales cycles, and you have the opportunity to have a lot more revenue up front if you are able to reduce that negotiation time. But to do that well, obviously you can't just enable everybody to negotiate anything they want. So if you have a big sales team, you don't want to be in a position where everybody's just negotiating whatever.
Yeah.
But because you understand the common situations, the common thoughts of your customer, you can have a playbook that simplifies. Here you can have leeway to do this decision on your own. You can do it quickly. You can have the contract back to the customer within 24 or 48 hours versus, okay, let me run it up the line, let me run it down the line. So this is money on the table in your sales, right? This is money on the table and time, valuable time of your whole team that could be saved because you have mapped this out, you have thought about it, and you have said, yep, we can simplify it here. We can provide some resources internally here. We can provide some sales resources to the customer there. Every one of these things, shortening your sales cycle.
And the insights that you gain through doing this mapping and understanding your buyer so well and all the personas and all of the hiccups and the little hills and speed bumps that lengthen that process, you may decide to restructure your entire contract process, your whole decision-making maze that the customer has to go through. And you may say, it seems like 70% of the time, this is a major stumbling block for our negotiations. We're just going to change that. That's the insight this gives you. This puts money off the table and into your pocket.
That's exactly right. So customer negotiating, now you're there, your customer onboarding.
This absolutely non-negotiable has to be seamless. Going from sales to customer success, it has to be smooth as butter. The customer it's a company customer. It's not a salesman or saleswoman's account. It is not a customer service rep account. It's a company account. So all of the data that was acquired on the sales side is going to be needed on the customer side. It's going to be needed for future sales and marketing information. It's going to be needed for future customer satisfaction information. There needs to be one data source that houses all data from the very first touch point. I'm going to say there's never a last touch point because there's always a reactivation or renewal or some sort of effort. But another central point of every single episode, it's the data.
Yes.
So I promised I'll put down my hammer between seasons and not pick it up again until next season. But that process has to be seamless. And the only way to do that is with good data. The customer should not feel a hiccup between signing that paperwork to onboarding to their regular account conversations. That's what cements the long-term relationship. That's what leads to renewals, cross-sells, upsells, referrals, testimonials, pretty much anything else that's going to add money. Never let it hit the table, just put it in the pocket. That's another tangible ROI on the customer journey.
So going back into that room, so all your department sort of stakeholders internally wrote down their touch points, right? When you're getting into the room, the onboarding is a major connection point internally in your company. And knowing this touch points, because this is a time when the sales team is still touching, but now you've got maybe other people connecting, the people implementing the software with the people on their team and your team. And those are the technologists and those are program managers, or maybe it's equipment that they're implementing, or maybe your engineers are co-developing a product. You have this huge transition between your company and their company and the personnel. And there's a lot of information that gets lost. And in bad onboardings, you might be wasting a month of time easily. I've seen this in product development where people are just trying to reconstruct what exactly happened because the sales team and the decision maker said, great, there you go. And now the customer experience isn't great, but your team's eager to get going. You have a customer you could be delivering and billing. And now there's this like weird, vague time. So one, this is critical. Multiple teams should be bringing their touch points on onboarding. If only the sales team or only your ops team, for example, have the onboarding covered, that means that they're not thinking about that integration. And that means you have a gap that you can address and create such a better experience and faster process for implementing your product or deploying it. The second is, don't let this devolve into a fight, right? This is where the collaboration is happening. And so this is an opportunity to then define that. If you don't have it, if it doesn't look like it's a good process, if it looks like there's gaps and touch points are going unheeded, this is an opportunity to create a handoff process, to have the team after your workshop for mapping the customer journey, have that sales team, have that ops or product or whoever is next in line for getting that information. They have to sit down and they have to hash out, what do you give me? What do I give you? How do you want that formatted? Where does it go? And that process is now set up and you're not dropping things in this process. Very common point of dropping in the handoff during onboarding.
One other general theme that I've hammered through and I will continue to hammer: customer success, customer service, customer support, whatever label you want to throw on it, is not and should not be a cost center. It is a revenue center. If you or anyone in your company treats it like, feels like, or calls it a cost center, it will cost you money. Your customers are your biggest asset. It's not your IP. It's not your manufacturing plant. It's not your employees. It's not your intellectual property. Your customers are your biggest asset. You need to take care of them, treat them like gold. The way to do that is properly taking care of them with a customer success team. That's where you get them to buy more, buy longer, and sell more to other people. When you have new upgrades, when you have new products come out, who are they going to go to? They're going to go to you. That's who they have the relationship with. So understanding that part of the journey is so very critical. Don't ignore it. This is where you need every single department in your organization, every functional area needs to look at that area and say, you know what, here's how I can make it better.
Now, some of our customers are going to have small companies. They don't have a team for customer success, but imagine the flow of that customer journey, right? And when we focus on the customer journey, we're talking about the customer, but underneath the customer journey, there is your company's workflow process,
Mhm.
which covers how things go from the customer and all the way through company production or development or deployment and out. You can map responsibilities of every department, and you can have customer success as a function or a role that goes throughout cross-cutting. And maybe one half of it is this group is responsible, the other half is this, but you can be designating that customer success is a responsibility, even if you can't have a department for it just yet.
So do this little exercise. Assuming you have at least 3 customers, think of who your most valuable customer is. If they had a question, a concern, a problem, who would they call and how would they be handled? What's the urgency? How soon would that be addressed? Think of your most irritating client, the one that's not really making you a lot of money. Maybe they're even costing you a little bit of money. And you really wouldn't mind if they lost your phone number. If they call, if they email, if they say, I have a problem, how do you handle that? Who handles it?
Mm-hmm.
And how long does it take to handle it? And then that middle customer, they pay their bills. They don't cause a lot of problems. They're good. Let's say they have a problem or they have a question. Maybe they're calling and you don't know why they're calling. They want to place another order. You don't know. How do you handle that customer? You need to figure out from the whole realm of those types of customers that need to be handled, what type of customer success organization and process do you need? Not every customer is a good customer, but you don't know what your customers are, what their needs are, what they're worth until you have a structured process and a trained professional role handling it, a playbook.
And once you're in that customer journey mapping phase, you don't need to write in that workshop the entire FAQ of everything the customer service team handles. But if you can imagine the scenarios and you realize, for example, that every time you have one of these customers calling and actually the phone that rings is the executive assistant that you have hired part-time. So 2 days of the week, they're unreachable. And 3 days of the week, they might be reachable, right? You're like, oh, okay. Like step number one, the people who call with a question, they're actually getting to somebody who can help them solve it consistently during the hours we have published. But then later you can be creating the playbooks and the FAQs and compiling that knowledge so that more people are able to handle these things correctly.
And if you are a smaller company, and we realize many of our audience members aren't quite at that scale up phase, they are learning more so they can get to that point. Maybe you only have 5, 10 people on staff. That's fine. Let people know, let your customers know, your prospects know on your website, this is our process. If you can provide a phone number, even one where they can leave a voicemail, that is far more desirable than leaving no contact method, or at least leave an email that is not info at or help at or support at. If you can do anything other than just leave a generic form that doesn't say we'll get back with you within X hours or days, the customer has to know that they're going to be heard and that they're going to be responded to.
And look, it's entirely possible that you have somebody monitoring that contact form day and night, but it just doesn't feel like it when you go on a website. You never look at a contact form saying like, oh, I just feel like somebody's going to get back to me really fast. And I will tell you, I have had countless experiences with B2B businesses going to their contact form, not finding a phone. And, a week later, if I still want to reach for them, usually for some reason, I'm going on LinkedIn, I'm trying to find the CEO of the company and reach out to them direct, which is probably the opposite of what they wanted in terms of how people reach out to them, because that contact form went out into nowhere. So if you have mapped your customer journey and you don't have a way to deal with my customers need to reach me at a later point in time that isn't sales, and I've actually addressed their need, like that's a huge gap. You're potentially losing your customers to others, and you're creating a really bad experience for them.
You're much more patient than I am. If I am at the beginning of that customer journey and I am doing my research and looking for alternatives, if there is no way to reach that company and I have questions that are not answered through detailed FAQs or detailed content, and there is no way to contact them other than a contact form, close out that page, open another, search again.
So just to clarify the example I gave, I wasn't going to be their customer. I just needed to reach somebody there. That's why I was patient. But if I was a customer, I'd be gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got the service, people calling, you're able to address that. You have some method of dealing with this piece. You've thought through it through your customer journey. There's one last step, which is oftentimes forgotten. Voice of the customer.
Absolutely. Once that company becomes your customer, they are a wealth of information, not just for how to keep them happy and retain them, but how can you improve your product or service? What would make them want to become a raving fan and tell others? What is going to help deepen that relationship? What do they see on the horizon? Do they have opportunities that they'd like to take advantage of, but maybe they're missing a capability that they don't have? And you know what? If you put your head together, you probably go ahead and put something together for them. Are there challenges that they see in the future in the market, their customer market, their supplier market, the economic market that maybe in the Far East or in Africa, something that they need, a raw material that they're going to have problems with the supply chain, in the industry, the competitive industry? What are they seeing that you need to know to help them? Also, what upcoming problems that you would be able to impact for them with a solution. So anything you can do to further that relationship is going to help not only them, but also grow your opportunities and help service them better and help gain more customers.
So you got into this workshop. You spent an hour with your team. Everybody brought their piece of paper. You laid out the phases kind of on the table. You've got your columns of everybody and sticky notes, right? You can put this together pretty quickly. If everybody did their homework within about an hour to an hour and a half, you could have placed it all on a table. So you've got 5, 6 different people representing different areas of that journey. And then you take a look at it. You discuss each one in turn after everybody put their sticky notes on, and then somebody just writes it down and you have it documented. Now, voice of the customer. You can actually be talking to your customer later and you can say, hey, we put together kind of a journey, kind of trying to understand a little bit better what it's like for you to have gone through the purchasing of this service or product with us. Can I run this by you? Just see if it feels right. And you can start getting feedback on it real time as well. And so that voice of the customer, you can be running these ideas by them and now you're validating.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we hop off, we feel like we've probably proved to you that there is money on the table that you are leaving if you haven't thought about this. Money that you could be spending wisely, better ways to be serving your customers, providing more value to them along the way. But just a simple example to that last one everybody goes through, which is every company builds a website. In 2024, every company is building a website. And maybe you're updating a website if you have one built. Okay, building a good website, we know the prices range, but let's say between 20,000, 50,000, very normal for kind of a mid-sized, smallish business to spend on getting their website decent and good. So your marketing team is thinking about things like search engine optimization and ensuring the graphics are really good looking and you have good descriptions on every page. But if you don't have that customer journey map before you're investing this money into your website, so it's not only the money, but it's going to take a lot of effort for your team because the content has to be written, the interviews have to be done for that content, the pictures have to be taken of all the people, you have to coordinate the shirts and all of that. So there's a lot of effort. It's usually 3 months plus of effort, depending on the size of the company and the size of the revamp, just for a simple website revamp. So you're already going to be investing that time and money. If you have your customer journey in front of you, you can say, okay, what are we doing at the awareness stage? What are we doing at the research stage? Do we have some documents that help with the competitor stage? What do we have in terms of FAQ documents that people can self-service? You can put search engine optimization on an FAQ document. You can optimize an FAQ page to be search engine indexable, but that content is so valuable to the customer, right? So you're still doing all of that other work for the marketing, but the value of the website itself, if you've actually thought through this website could help address something at every step of the journey and have that additional functionality to it. So it's not just something that's like, flashy and beautiful and has like good convincing words for only one stage of the journey, so that it's actually collecting and providing value at every stage of the journey. So, you're going to spend that money anyways. Don't leave that money on the table because you didn't add a simple functionality or address a simple question that could have come out of this customer journey that would have put everything, just made it a little bit more excellent for your customers.
So think back to one of the first things that we said at every single touch point. And of course, the website is a touch point. And that touch point can be used at awareness, research, multiple points through the sales. It can go back to the decision. It can be used for current customers. So it's really one constant throughout the entire customer journey map. So think about what happens at each touch point, what the customer is thinking, what they're feeling, what information they're seeking, what concerns they have, what motivates them. A website is wonderful for sharing information, but think about how they're feeling. That helps set the tone of the information you share. That helps set the words of the information you share. So make sure your FAQs include, so if you're worried about this, or if you're facing this problem, here's how we solved it. So you can address all those touch points, all those thoughts, all those fears, all those hopes, all, the risks that they perceive. You can address all those points of the journey map in your website.
So in this episode, hope we covered this in depth, giving you a great sense of not only what a customer journey map is, but also how you can get it implemented quickly so that you have this information available for your whole team to be thinking about the customer even more thoroughly, and that you can have it within a week without significant effort or anything huge going on. But because this is such a hot topic, and because Michelle and I are so convinced you need to have your customer journey mapped, we are providing a free resource on our website. Our website is www.gogogrowshow.com. You will see a free resource, which is a template and a facilitation document. Very simple, just reiterating this and putting it on paper. So you can just download that and have your customer journey done within a week and have that fantastic foundation for serving your customers better, using your investments into marketing and sales better, and making sure your processes all support this incredibly important part of the process, which is your customer side of the process.
Once you go through that, we would love to hear your feedback. Please come back to this episode. We're hoping that you've already subscribed and maybe shared the Go Go Grow show with friends, colleagues that can also find value. But join one of our upcoming office hours. Tell us how filling out that template and working through that with your team, how it made an impact. If you have questions, we'll be happy to answer that as well.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Our podcast is available on all major platforms and YouTube.
Thank you.